This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast.
Exclusively on the Herd Out Media Network.
Tell it to me straight up.
Hello, and welcome into the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hail Varsity Network. I am Greg Smith, I think I finally have everything straight after a very crazy couple of weeks that's been way busier than the off season had been. There's that little adjustment period that kind of throws me off, which is more information about my workflow than you guys wanted to know. But today I'm joined by word writer for Hail Varsity and Varsity Club host Derek Peterson. Derek, thank you for being on the show. How are you?
I'm good. It's wet and rainy and a little moody in Chicago. So it's a nice reprieve from, we had a little bit of heat that was making it not fun, but it means I don't get to go play basketball today. So we're breaking a string of 4 or 5 days of actually being active instead of just sitting inside all day long. Okay, well that's good. We like activity around here on Straight Up Breakdown Podcast.
Have you been progressively getting better with your hoop skills? Are you trying to get better, or are you just trying to get some run in?
So I have no left hand, none whatsoever. I'm right hand dominant. And I taught myself the last day I was out, I taught myself a little spin over my right shoulder, left hand scoop shot.
Okay.
And I was big happy because it was going in. And I was like, all right, we're going to make 20 of these in a row before we move on to something else. And it took a couple minutes before I could start stringing some together. But then I made 20 in a row. And I was like, I actually taught myself something today. I feel accomplished. So we're adding, I'm not Jacob Padilla out here, but we're adding stuff.
But you are adding stuff to your bag. I think we can say now that you have a bag.
There
is at least one move there. So
I also hadn't picked up a basketball in probably 2 or 3 years. Yeah, probably at least 2 years.
I can't remember the last time I actually picked up the basketball, which is not it's not necessarily on purpose. I do like to play basketball. I just haven't. Maybe it honestly is a super weird, but it may have been one of those times where that 3-on-3 tournament was happening in the rail yard, and before they set up, we were all down there just kind of shooting around. I think that happened. And so I think that was the last time that I actually touched a basketball, which has now probably been 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, see, my old apartment complex didn't have a basketball court. When I was growing up, I had a basketball hoop in my driveway, so I was out there every single night. And then when I was in college, we had a activity center that we all had access to, so we just went to that every day. But then I moved out here, and I had a Y close to me that I would try to go to, but then, obviously COVID hit, and I wasn't going to a gym. I was just using the apartment gym because it was smaller. But yeah, it's we have a nice kind of fenced in basketball area at my new complex, and I'm enjoying it. I made a friend.
Okay.
I made a new friend. He's 6 and he can shoot on he can shoot on a full-size basketball hoop with a full-size basketball. So
wow.
He is he's already better than I am. So
he's ahead of the curve.
I'm making money moves out here.
I like it. Maybe he can teach you your next thing to put into your bag.
No, see, my plan is he's going to be the Thunder's first round draft pick in 15 years whenever they finally use up all of their first round picks.
They might still have some.
Then I'm gonna have a best buddy that can give me NBA tickets and help out with watches and cars and stuff like that.
That is a sound strategy. I like where your head's at. Now, each week we have a couple of segments that are mainstays of the show. The first one is called Coach Speak, where we go over something that a coach, player, or a talking head said, and then we give you the straight up breakdown of what they meant.
Coach Speak to Real Talk.
This week comes courtesy of Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who has somehow made it onto the show quite a bit. But this time it is for a good reason. The superstar quarterback credited Simone Biles for having courage and said, quote, "I give Simone so much credit for her ability to speak the truth, her truth, and to answer tough questions, and to have the courage to say, quote, I'm scared, or I don't feel like I should be out there," Rodgers said in the interview with The Ringer. People of all ages and professions are dealing with mental issues, especially during COVID. It's something that we should be talking about and ways to help people get through it, whether it's techniques or therapy or just conversations, letting people know that they are not alone. And that's what Simone did. I'm very, very proud of her. So, Derek, it's not necessarily even what does that mean, but what are your thoughts in hearing Aaron Rodgers say that?
Well, it's cool. the last line of that was let people know they're not alone. Simone got a lot of blowback for what she did and for what she said and for what she prioritized. And, I'm sure athletes don't necessarily pay attention to what, like the Charlie Kirks of the world say. But sometimes it's hard to block out the blowback, to block out the negativity. And, I think we have a local example of that here with Adrian Martinez's podcast. He's talked about that a lot. You just have to learn to kind of block that stuff out. And it's hard. It's a process you have to continually train your mind to do. And so, like, not that she needed Aaron Rodgers to come to her defense, or not that Simone needed Aaron Rodgers to, I guess, validate what she was saying or feeling. But, for somebody with his stature, somebody with his sort of name recognition to sort of kind of be in her corner. I think that's important. I think it's important for people that have sort of, because like Aaron specifically with this offseason, he directly experienced what can be sort of the other side of intense media attention, right, with what was going on with his contract situation and all that other stuff. So like he knows probably intimately what it's like to sort of experience the lowest of the lows of athletic superstardom, and probably has an idea of what that's like living in that. And so, I just think like, you go back to like Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan a couple years ago in the NBA talking about mental health, Dak Prescott a year or two ago with the Dallas Cowboys talking about it. I think the more athletes come out and say, yeah, we're dealing with this stuff too. It from our perspective, from the outside looking in, it further humanizes both professional and collegiate athletes, which I feel like is a big, it's an important thing that needs to be done. We're kind of making progress, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But from their perspective, I think it sort of, signifies exactly what he said. Like you are, other athletes are dealing with this too. You're not alone. And yes, you might get blowback from, people outside your world that don't necessarily know what you put in and day out. But the people that are experiencing this stuff with you right alongside you, like we get it and we understand, and there are no hard feelings or anything like that. So I think, like I said, it's not necessarily that Simone Biles needs other athletes to come out and validate her, what she says, what she feels, because just from an accomplishment standpoint, she's one of the most accomplished right, athletes in the history of sports. But like, I think just to have that sort of community, which maybe isn't the right word, but I can't think of the right word, but just that community of athletes to sort of have in your corner and know like, yeah, we have gone through this stuff. We understand what you're saying and what you're going through.
Yeah, and I think that I think that you're right in a lot of that, all of that. But I do think that there is something to, and I'm glad you brought this up, like kind of the humanizing of athletes. And we've seen it kind of throughout the college and professional ranks. And it's starting, like I said, but we still have a ways to go. But I think that sometimes it's easy. It feels like it's easy for people, whether it's, fans or kind of your pundits that just want to yell into the void to make whatever point they're trying to make. Like there's a disconnect in thinking or realizing that these athletes, no matter their accomplishments, and in this particular case, we're talking about a very accomplished person, goes through all of the same struggles that the rest of us go through, right? Like Simone Biles being the greatest like gymnast of all time does not like insulate her from having feelings, right? Like it doesn't make that go away. And I find it strange that people act as if that's the case, as if suddenly because you have X amount of dollars or you have X skills that you don't go through things that other people go through. And this is where I'm happy that Aaron made the correlation too with COVID, because I'm pretty sure you and I talked about this like off pod, that one of the things that you hoped came out of COVID was that people came together and kind of we all went through this and it was a shared suffering kind of deal. And there are things that are going to be different and better because of it. Don't necessarily think we're getting that, which is a whole different subject altogether. But I feel like that does exist when it comes to these athletes coming out and making the statements like Simone did, like Serena Williams has before. And when talking about postpartum and coming back from having a baby, you know that there are a lot of women that identified with her on that, the same way there's a lot of people that identify with Simone, the same where there are people that look at Kevin Love and go, man, like if that's what I'm feeling too, right? Like I do think that there is something to that because you've seen a lot of people come out, whether it's other athletes that are at the Olympics right now, or it's just other athletes that aren't there, other people you've just seen on Twitter that say, okay, like she can say this and has the courage to go through it and then actually put words to or put it out there in public. Then maybe it's okay to tap it into me and I can try to figure this out too. I wish that I understand why we have to also beat back the idiots out there, but there are also a great deal of people that have taken some level of solace in her even speaking up about this, which in the long roundabout way is a positive thing to come out of it.
Yeah, I think another positive too is, and I understand probably not everyone is going to feel the same way that I do, which is fine. But I think like this is sort of exposing, or this particular Olympics has sort of exposed some of the warts of the way the Olympics are structured and set up and organized each year. So like, do you listen to the Hoop Collective podcast with Brian Windhorst?
I have not in a while.
So he's in Tokyo, or he was in Tokyo for USA basketball. And he was sort of talking about his experience getting over there. Because they don't have sort of the access to the vaccines that we have here in the United States, they are like, this is our rule book. You are following the rules or we are not letting you into the country. And so there was like, he told the story of one guy that was on his flight who you have to have a COVID test within 72 hours of boarding your plane. And this guy had a COVID test that was 20 minutes outside of that range.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't realize it until he had already boarded his plane from the United States to fly to Tokyo. He gets to Tokyo. They realize the mistake. He has to fly back to the United States, take a COVID test. It has to come back negative. And then he flies back to Tokyo.
Wow.
They wouldn't let him stay and take the test there. He had to fly back to the United States. So like they are real sticklers for the rules right now, understandably so. Windhorst was talking about how like his situation right now, he can only eat food at the like 7-Eleven that's near his hotel. That's all he can eat is just this one spot. He can't go anywhere. He can't do anything. He can't see anyone because he has to be like quarantined in his hotel to be able to like, I guess, be attending media at some of these events. He talked about how like we are in Tokyo, but for all intents and purposes, we're not in the country. We're not in Tokyo. We're just kind of here. And so like you think about it from that perspective for the media people, I can only imagine what it's like for the athletes who are there who don't have fans in the stands, right, for one, who have to go through all these quarantine procedures. Like this is probably not an easy thing where, you know, having the USA crest on your chest or wherever it might be on your uniform is like all the motivation that you need to get up and go do the thing that you need to do. Like I imagine that this is a very difficult task and a very difficult thing to be asking these athletes to do. I saw a video of sort of Olympic Park from Rio 2016, and it's just destroyed. Like it's abandoned. It looks like, it looks like, what is the nuclear Holocaust place in Ukraine? Not Holocaust, Chernobyl. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. It looks a little bit like that. Yeah. There's just nobody around, completely uninhabited. And I was like, this stuff, I feel like we need to kind of tweak it a little bit. And I hope with Simone saying like, hey, this is not easy to go through what we're going through right now. This is a difficult time for us. Maybe the Olympic Committee or whoever decides this stuff will sort of change things up a little bit moving forward and not like ship these people off to one like very closed off area. And I don't know, I feel like I'm rambling. It just feels like there's a
better way to do that.
Yeah, it feels like there's been, some warts exposed with the games. I don't know. We'll
But
see.
I always feel like that though, because I've seen the pictures and video of Rio that you reference, and it looks wild considering what it looked like during the Olympics. I mean, that's going to happen in Tokyo too. Like it basically happens almost everywhere, right? And because I was watching, was it baseball maybe, and they're showing it. There's no people in the stands, and you realize that they built these stadiums to be able to do this. And so you've got to figure out something to do with those things later on down the road. But I can't imagine, because the one thing that you didn't mention that I have heard athletes mention about what makes that really tough right now is that your family can't be there, right? And so because of the time difference, like Simone Biles' family, it's like 3 a.m. and they're trying to watch what's happening, and then they're on FaceTime afterwards, and then it's just there's a weird delay because you're calling from like it's just an odd situation. And I do think that this is, and we'll have to see if this ends up being, if like you'll get more articles on this or anything afterwards. But I do think that one of the things that people didn't give enough credit for, like what makes the Olympics cool for the athletes, is the social component of it.
Mhm.
Now there are the things about the Olympic Village aside, like just seeing people and just being able to go out and then experience whatever culture you are now immersed in for a couple of weeks. Like there is like missing that part of it. And just basically, like you said with Windhorse, like you're not really in Tokyo, you're in your hotel, you're in the gym, and that's basically it. Because think about it, if Windhorse can't go anywhere but the 7-Eleven, I can't imagine that any athlete can go do anything either.
Yeah. I mean, like, isn't the Olympics just basically a big celebration of sport?
Yes.
Like if you boil it down to it, isn't that what it is? And this isn't a celebration. And I understand that like it's not going to be that way moving forward. This is maybe hopefully a one-off because of COVID. But like still, I think, there just needs to be more humanization of athletes, because like, I don't know if you've ever had days like this, but I've had days where I've phoned it in and I've been like, man, I'm just not really feeling it. And you half-ass something because you're not really in the right mental headspace.
Yeah.
Like if you're not in the right mental headspace and you're half-assing something when you're doing like flips and cartwheels and all kinds of stuff in the air that you could land like 2 degrees off where you're supposed to be and absolutely shatter your ankle. Like I can imagine why you might not want to be doing those things if you're not in the right headspace. So maybe, I guess a more succinct way to try to say what I was trying to say earlier is just maybe a little bit more appreciation for what's expected of these athletes and what's on their shoulders will go a long way.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a very key takeaway from all of this, and I'll just say that I hope that is more prevalent moving forward. We'll see. I'm cynical, so we'll see. But shifting gears a little bit, the college football world lost a titan of the sport this weekend when legendary Florida State coach Bobby Bowden passed away at the age of 91. Bowden won 2 national championships while at Florida State in 93 and 1999. He led the Seminoles to an NCAA record 14 consecutive seasons, finishing in the top 5 of the AP poll. I did not realize that he only had 1 losing season in his entire time at Florida State. It was actually his first in 1976, and he also had 28 straight postseason appearances with the Seminoles. Now, for some weird reason, as a kid, I watched a lot of Florida State football. I think it was because my uncle was a Florida State fan. And so we always just kind of have those weird attachments to teams as like a family member or like a friend of yours, like down the street, likes that team. So Florida State is someone that I actually watched a lot, and I was fairly familiar with Bowden, even though I didn't know that only 1 losing season stat. But what I kind of want to talk to you about as we lose kind of a like really, really big name in the sport is that something that I think have not seen talked about a lot about kind of the first wave of remembrance of Bobby Bowden's life, and maybe that's probably the right way to go about it. But like what he built at Florida State starting in 1976 when they were like nothing as a program to making them at one point, I don't know if they still are, a blue blood program in college football. Like what I wanted to ask you is can that be done today? Like is that possible? Could a younger version of like a young like Urban Meyer, right? I guess he's still young, but could a young Urban Meyer pick a school like that's not on the map right now and build them into a blue blood program?
Let's break that down.
Maybe. Short answer. Now I would like to just say off the jump that like Bobby Bowden's time as a superpower in college football was like before I was born. So this is my commentary on this is going to be from somebody that watched it through like YouTube clips or read about him, not somebody that lived it. So like, I think my parents were in high school in the 80s whenever he was doing this stuff, just to kind of carbon date myself a little bit. Yeah. I think like from just the creativity he had with his teams, sure, you could replicate that. Mm-hmm. From what do they make, like 20, how many bowl games consecutively did they go to? It was a lot. 28. Yeah, it was a lot. So from that standpoint, if we're going to measure like longevity from that standpoint, Virginia Tech was on 27 heading into this past season. So you can get there. But if you're talking about the 14 straight top 5 finishes, maybe Nick Saban approaches that, or Dabo Swinney approaches that, or something like that. But I think the thing that made Bobby Bowden's Florida State teams so much different was that he not only said we will play anywhere at any time, at any place. He backed it up.
Yeah.
What did they go do? I had this in front of me a second ago. Okay, 1981. They had road games against Nebraska, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Pitt, and LSU. So like from a scheduling standpoint, that won't be done again unless we get this SEC Super Conference. Right. Because they were an independent back then, were they not?
Yes. Yeah. That was before they joined the ACC.
So like I think that's the part of it where you're going to have a hard time seeing that sort of build again, because I think there are only a handful of programs in college football right now that can really find success going the independent route. And if those teams do go the independent route, I don't know that they're going to partake in sort of the scheduling nightmare that Florida State partook in and year out with Bobby Bowden, because and that's the way that they wanted to build a program. They said, we're going to play the best of the best every single year, and that's how we're going to get our guys better. And it worked. And I don't know how many programs are going to look at that path of building and say, yeah, that's the path for us. Because I also don't think, we're talking about like 80s, 90s. We're talking about, Bobby Bowden was at Florida State for such a long time. Tom Osborne was at Nebraska for such a long time. You don't get coaching tenures like that anymore unless you are a Dabo Swinney or a Nick Saban and you're winning national titles 3 out of every 5 seasons. Like if you are, I was listening to a podcast the other day and somebody said that if Nebraska goes 6-6 this year, it's still not enough to save Scott Frost's job. And I was like, really? That's where we're at? So part of it is like coaches are decentivized from scheduling big time opponents. Coaches are decentivized from scheduling tough games out of conference, which we saw Nebraska try to get out of the Oklahoma game. Like you can't really fault Scott Frost's thinking, allegedly, if he was wanting out of that game. So like from that standpoint, I think it's going to be tough. It was just really unique what he was able to do. It was really unique. And I don't know if it can be replicated again in this sort of era of college football that we're in. Now, maybe it, like I said, maybe if the SEC forms into this like 30 team, 32 team NFL like super league type deal, and you have Clemson and Florida State and Ohio State and all these other big name programs from the other conferences plucked in, and you're just playing this like murderous row of opponents every week. Maybe you could see that. But I also don't think, I think part of it too, recruiting is so much more spread out. And that's a wild thing to say, considering that like Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State get like the bulk of the prospects. But like, I don't think anybody can go into Florida and just lock down the state anymore. I don't think you can go into that state and just have a firm stranglehold over recruiting in that state. So, I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I almost think that there has to be a lot of factors and circumstances that all come together at the right time, because some of this is timing, right? And that he started there, Bowden did, in 1976, and had this very long run, in which, like you said, had 28 straight postseason appearances. And it's harder to even do that. It's harder to even just be at a school for that long, because in part, it's not even just that, expectations are changed and guys can get fired for having a down year or two, but also those guys will leave, right? And so you'll see that guy now, like Saban and Dabo are kind of the exceptions to that. But like basically everyone else, it feels like, is basically a revolving door of saying this coach is putting his name in for that job, or this guy's agent is kind of talking like every year we hear about Lincoln Riley and James Franklin, who are doing great jobs at their current job. Like, would you like, you're not out here expecting that those guys are going to be at Penn State and Oklahoma respectively for 22 years. Like, it's just not, and it wasn't 22 that Bowden was there, it was more, but like, you just to put a random number on it, you don't expect them to be there for that long. So there's the longevity piece of it that I just think it might actually be the hardest part of it. But then there is the taking a school that was off the radar previously and then getting them so squarely on the radar that you finish in the top 5 14 years in a row. Like, I don't know what school, like if we made a list, like what schools would even be eligible for that? Because honestly, the very first school that I was kind of thinking of would probably not count. It would be like UCF, where like, but within that, you would have to then get them to get into a conference like Florida State did as well. Being in Florida helps because you're just closer to, better talent. And if you recruit your state well, you're always going to be pretty good. But the rub with that is I don't think it's the same where like the ACC is itching to let UCF into the league at this
point. That's the problem right there. Because think about the announcement.
Different.
Yeah, think about the announcement UCF just made where they're like, we're finally going to play Florida. Like,
how long did that take them to be able to do that?
From UCF's side of things, you're like, we want to go that path, so we have to play those games. From Florida's side of things, it's like, why would we want to open ourselves up to that? Why would we want to allow you to potentially beat us? Like, we don't want to do that. We'd rather play, Southeast Mississippi. Like there's no incentive for us to do that. So like, that's part of it. And the other thing too, and this is a completely different side of the conversation. I think it's funny when we get into conversations like this with like, who's the next Alabama? Or like specific to this conversation, can we replicate what Bobby Bowden did at Florida State? Part of it is like, well, you need Bobby Bowden to do it. Like part of it is like, well, I mean, sure, you can try to be the next Alabama, but you need Nick Saban. Sure, like Nebraska can try to get back. You need Tom Osborne. Like part of it is like, these guys are generational talents as coaches. And rightfully so, they are talked about as some of the greatest coaches of all time. And like when we talk about like, oh, well, was this replicable, or was this like period of success? Can they get that again? Part of it is like, sure, but the coach is also the real key piece of it too. So like you can try to have some of the other things in place, but don't devalue what Bobby Bowden brought to the table, because like, you could get a UCF that's like, okay, we're just going to go the independent route. We think the group of five is falling apart, and so we're just going to play Florida. We're going to try to play Georgia. We're going to try to play, I don't know, Clemson. We're going to try to play as many big teams as we can. Like, if you've got Josh Heupel as your head coach, it ain't working out.
No.
Or whoever their head coach is right now. Gus Malzahn, it ain't working out. You got to have.
No, and I'm a Gus fan, but no, that's not the same.
Yeah, no, it's just not the same. So, like, that's part of it too.
It's funny that as you were saying that, the other team that I thought about that, and this comes up all the time, USC. Like, why can't USC get back? Well, they don't have Pete Carroll anymore. Like,
yeah,
he was kind of in a
Texas
cog to that whole thing. Yeah,
Texas, Charlie Strong, and then Weirdo, and now Steve Sarkisian.
So, as a side note, because I have you here, do you think that the Sarkisian thing is going to work?
I don't know. It could. It might. I also think that there are a lot of factors at play that make that job difficult for any coach that walks in the door.
Yes.
They got problems down there. Problems.
I still often wonder if part of the reason, and it's one of my favorite what ifs in college football history, is like Nick Saban flirting with the Texas job. And I still wonder if that had more to do with what you just mentioned about the behind the scenes and the difficulty that like Nick Saban put the feelers out there, or Jimmy Sexton, his agent, put the feelers out there. They didn't like the responses that they got about like how meddlesome the people behind the scenes would be, and Saban would never take that. Like, I feel like while I bet the people at Alabama, like the boosters and stuff, like want to be involved, they still ultimately defer to Nick Saban. And I don't think that can ever be the case at Texas, even for Nick Saban.
You've kind of like boxed yourself in there, because that's the kind of coach you need to come in and say, this is how we're doing things. We're doing it my way. You need to shut up and get behind that. And not only have a coach that's willing to say that, but also have a coach with the cachet for the people behind the scenes to respect that. But you can't get that coach there.
Right.
Because the coach doesn't want to deal with that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they have, I mean, maybe Sarkisian is good. He was like, okay at Washington. And like, you look at him, but they were ready for him to be gone at the tail end of Washington. And he's had a lot of talent around him ever since. So we'll see. Texas has talent, but it's probably not the same as Alabama talent. And he's got a lot of stuff that he's going to have to deal with. So yes, we'll see. Absolutely. It's just fun. It's just fun when Texas is not good.
Yes, but yes. Okay. I'm not going to say that I'm rooting for Texas to be back, but I like them kind of flirting with being back and then getting pulled back into reality. Like that's
by Maryland.
I'm a fan of that. Yeah, that's what I like to see when it comes to Texas. I like to see them think that they're about to take a step and be back, and then get humbled all over again. Now, every week we end the show with my favorite segment of the show called Put Them on Blast, where we basically put someone on blast for something that they did or said.
Put them on blast.
Today, I am actually going with the NBA as a whole, like just the NBA. Tampering is the word that I can
stop.
And just no, it's not. Oh, stop. But we're going to be on the other side. It has been a long time since I've been on the other side from a guest. I'll put them on blast, but I guess the NBA, according to reports, is going to, they are investigating potential tampering violations involving the sign and trade deals involving the Bulls picking up Lonzo Ball and the Heat picking up Kyle Lowry. This is according to Woj over at ESPN. Please report the news. Don't inject your weirdness into it. Side note. I guess that technically this is the correct thing to be doing, because they do have rules, and I guess rules need to be enforced, air quotes. But like, when are we just going to get rid of these dumb tampering rules? Like, I don't understand what they're actually serving. Like to me, like, I just think it all needs to go away, because I just don't understand. Like, what is it? Is it we're still kind of pretending that these deals aren't being made ahead of time, even though before free agency, I think it was either Woj or Shams that tweeted out that the Heat were locked in on bringing Kyle Lowry into the team, though somehow free agency hadn't opened and we had the entire framework to this deal. I would have maybe hit pause on tweeting all of that out. But hey, that's just me. You guys got them in trouble. But the NBA has to go on blast for even investigating this thing, because I think that they should just investigate if tampering should even exist or not and just do away with that. And stay tuned next week for my rant about the luxury tax and all of that. Like,
oh my God.
But that's a very specific thing because of my particular team. But that's okay.
You were paying $130 million for three players. Don't sit there and complain about the luxury tax.
There's also listen.
I do not want to hear it.
There are also teams that need to be spending more and actually trying to win. Looking at you, Mr. Thunder, like you need to get that figured out too.
We can't get people to come to Oklahoma City in free agency, so we have to build through the draft, which is what the league wants.
Yeah,
the league champion just did it that way. The league would prefer that teams build the way we are building and not the way that you guys built by just pilfering pissed off players from other teams, from the smaller markets. The tampering rules are in place, by the way, as a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, air quotes, highly emphasized. We're helping the small markets.
It really is, which is wild to begin with, which is how, like, it's funny because, like, I've had now a couple of Bucks focused episodes. I had Miriam Fader on talk about her book about Giannis last week. I've had my guy Sparky from Milwaukee on the show to talk about the Bucks and the Packers. So I'm like Milwaukee adjacent here, right? In a weird way. And
me too.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of, like, Milwaukee Bucks Twitter was on fire for the last week about this whole tampering situation based on what happened to them was that last year? Man,
yeah, it cost them Bogdanovich.
Yeah, so both of those things. Now you got me in a double rant because the tampering should go away, and we need to get rid of the luxury tax because, oh, by the way, if your Thunder drafts too well, then you're going to have to make a decision on being able to keep those guys because the damn luxury tax. That needs to go too. Double put them on blast today.
It just spreads talent around the league.
I don't want to spread it around the league. I just want it in LA. Man. The truth came out.
The truth came out. Did you enjoy watching, I set aside the Lakers fandom and all of the frustrations that came with this season. Did you enjoy this last NBA season?
Setting that the frustration side, yes, I did.
The fact that we entered the playoffs having no earthly clue who was going to make it to the finals, let alone win the championship. Was that an enjoyable thing for you?
Yes, it actually was, much to my surprise.
Which is point numero uno in the pros column for spreading talent around the league.
Yeah, but you still don't. That doesn't guarantee that those teams are going to win. We saw Brooklyn load up. They didn't win.
Right, because you had spread talent around the league. Because Milwaukee had talent. Because Giannis stayed in Milwaukee. Like, if SGA becomes all-star, perennial all-star, and he's option 1 or option 2 on a championship team, and Josh Giddey is perennial all-star and option 1 or option 2 on a championship team, and we've got like 3 other high first round draft picks, and we can only keep one of them. Like, if we get a title out of it, I don't care. If we got a title out of the Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant saga, it would not matter to me in the slightest that we had to lose James Harden to get it. I wouldn't care.
That would have changed that completely.
Yeah, I wouldn't care. And we were close to it. So, like, to me, it's not like, oh, the luxury tax cost us a title. To me, it's like Patrick Beverley being a punk cost us a title, and Kevin Durant quitting on us in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals cost us a title. Like, those are the things that cost us the title, not the luxury tax. Don't complain about the luxury tax.
I just think, the luxury tax is just hurting teams that want to actively spend to improve their roster. I don't know. That's how I kind of. I don't know, man.
No. It's not. No, it's not. It's not hurting teams.
Caruso because of the luxury tax.
It's not hurting teams that want to win. It's hurting teams with weak ownership. The Warriors were fine paying the luxury tax. You know who was not fine paying the luxury tax? Tillman Fertitta with the Houston Rockets.
That is true.
Destroyed the team because he didn't want to pay the luxury tax.
Which actually
that's the problem, not the tax. The owners that are wanting to penny pinch when they own NBA teams, that's the problem, not the luxury tax, not the mechanism. The people that are that are afraid of the mechanism are the problem.
I guess, but I also do think that I think your point is spot on about Fertitta, and I think that, and I maybe that was a big story in Houston. I feel like that should have been like huge news because I feel like a lot of people that are plugged into the NBA saw that coming a mile away, that they were going to start selling players off basically for pennies on the dollar. And it's exactly what happened just because of him, well, because of both him wanting to penny pinch, them not winning, and like what was happening with his other businesses, which is a bad combination for him. So after all of that, Derek, who are you putting on blast?
Mine is also NBA related, which is funny. But mine is actually, and this is going to be like friendly fire, probably a little bit. Mine is the, how do I start this? So I was watching a Denzel interview a couple days ago, and this was an old interview.
From Training Day?
Oh yeah.
Okay, my man.
From Training Day.
Okay. I was like, what?
That's your Denzel identifiers from Training Day?
Not really. Like, it's funny because I own like quite a few Denzel movies. It was just the first one that came to my mind. But yeah,
that's great. It's fine. It's a fine identifier for this. Yeah. Okay. I was watching a Denzel Washington interview. This was not a new interview. It was older. And like, without any context, he was basically talking about how journalists don't care about being right. They just care about being first and all of the problems that causes. And they don't care about the problems that causes. There's not an appreciation for what the report can do to the subject. There is only an appreciation for what me, myself, and I is going to gain by being first with the report. And this is like a problem that we face in journalism all the time. So like you see somebody like Rothstein, who is always first in college basketball, but you talk to anybody and his reputation is in the toilet because of it, because he'll get messaged and with info and he'll say, hey, wait for me to announce this. And then he doesn't wait. So like the piece of it that really rubbed me the wrong way was all of the stuff about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander before the NBA draft. He's going to get traded. He's getting packaged. The Thunder are trying to move him. No, they weren't. All of these people that I had never heard of until a few weeks before the draft that coincidentally had blue check marks next to their name. Why can Hail Varsity not get a blue check mark on Twitter?
I still can't get a response.
We can't get a blue check mark, but whatever. Story for another day. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was offered to the Detroit Pistons for number 1 as a package with SGA and number 6. First of all, no, he wasn't. And second of all, if the Detroit Pistons get offered a borderline all-star under the age of 23 and on a cost-controlled contract and the number 6 pick in the draft, they're not going to say no to that deal. So that was the first thing that happened. Then we were told that SGA and the number 6 pick were offered up to Cleveland for number 3. Again, no, he wasn't. And why would Cleveland turn that down? And then we were told that SGA was offered up, along with the number 6 pick again, to Toronto for the number 4 pick. So we were going to give up a borderline all-star on a cost-controlled contract from a rebuilding team that cannot attract that all-star otherwise to move up 2 spots in the draft. That's what you're going to report? Like in the media, like we get fed stuff to report by people with agendas. And sometimes the agenda is just to see, is this person going to share that information? Sometimes the agenda is to create mistrust. And so like I was thinking about it, I was like, what happens if all of these reports about SGA potentially being offered to all of these different teams, we were offering him in a bag of Cheetos for nothing. That's what it was. We had other picks we could have packaged to move up. What happens if he looks at all that stuff and has Sam Presti on his phone saying, no, I promise you, we're not trading you. I promise you, it's not happening. It's not happening. It's all false. What happens if he's just like, yeah, but I just have a little bit of doubt now. And then he leaves over something that got made up. That stuff was not offered. It was not offered. And the people that have a solidified reputation in NBA reporting said the same thing. It was not offered. He was not on the table. Somebody even said Oklahoma City had gone dark. So you've got these people over here that I've never heard of saying that SGA is being offered to every team in the top 5. And then you've got somebody else who works for ESPN and is cited almost daily saying, yeah, Oklahoma City's not talking to anyone. So like, it just bothers me because like, because we're in this business in the off season, when there's not stuff to write about, when you don't have stuff, you have to make your own content. And for newsbreakers, that's the off season is where you like make your name. And specifically with this NBA draft, like if Woj or Shams wasn't tweeting it, like it's not true. It's not happening. And those guys were saying nothing about Oklahoma City because no one knew anything about Oklahoma City. And so for these other people to be running around with basically speculation passed off as news being reported is a problem. It's a big problem. And I don't know. That's the part of this field that bugs me, is because there's a push to be first with news, and you're wrong sometimes. And it causes problems sometimes when you're wrong. And I don't feel like there's enough appreciation for that. Now, SGA signed his contract extension with the Thunder, so much to do about nothing. But I don't know. It just feels like a something in the profession that we got to figure out.
It also makes for a really odd situation, because you've had, and this happens all the time, where report comes out that player X is being held out there for trade fodder. The player goes to the team and says, "Hey, what's up with this?" The team denies it, but then it turns out that they really were being shopped around, right? And so because of that, anytime a report like this comes out, there is going to be a level of mistrust between the player and the team. Yeah. Now, as we know, it turned out to where maybe SGA, like in his camp, really were like, "Hey, man, we're in Presti, we trust. We know that he's not going to do this to us. We're about to sign this deal." So it all worked out anyway. But it's just and I've seen this with the Lakers, right? With the baby Lakers before LeBron, when they were in every trade discussion ever, and now it kind of all culminated this offseason, and finally the last one, which should have been the first one to go, finally left in Kuzma. Like, it's, so I've seen this happen, and it does affect teams. In that case, I do think that those guys were being shocked. So it's a little bit different where it wasn't made up, but either way, it ends up having an effect on you.
Yeah. So I'm obviously biased because the Thunder are my team, and because SGA is a superstar. No, I can't say superstar. He's a budding star on my team. So I'm obviously biased. But like, I was just looking at all of this and thinking, tell me you haven't watched the Thunder without telling me that you haven't watched the Thunder. Which is basically what it was. It was basically like, we haven't actually watched Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play basketball recently. So we're just like, this team that wants him told us that he wasn't worth a top 5 pick on his own, that the Thunder needed to package the number 6 pick with him. But this dude at age 22 averaged 25 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds per 36 minutes. On 51% shooting and 42% shooting from 3. 22 years old. That dude is that's the player that you hope the number 3 pick or the number 4 pick turns into. Hell, that's the player you hope the number 1 pick turns into.
Right.
Like, if you get offered that player and 6 for number 1, you're not turning that down.
Especially as a team, a different team that has a hard time luring free agents as well. So like, Detroit is not exactly going to go sign the top guy. So if they got that guy in a trade and 6 to have a shot at getting another potential all-star to pair along with him, like, you wouldn't turn that down. Like, it just wouldn't make sense. No. But like, I can't believe we ended up arguing about the luxury tax. I did not see that coming. That was a plot twist that I didn't see coming. But that's okay. That's okay. You can't be correct all the time. I mean,
how could you not expect me from Oklahoma City, literally the smallest market in the NBA, to not be for the luxury tax in relation to your dumb Lakers just running up the largest tab in the league so that you can win championships?
I cannot help it that people want to come to my team.
Here's what you want. You want Man City PSG privileges.
Yes.
For the
I'm
Lakers.
shocked. I actually thought that's who you. I thought you were going to put PSG on blast. I thought that's what was going to happen. But yes,
Well,
that is what I want.
I want Messi to be happy. So if he gets to play with Neymar and some of his Argentinian buddies and be happy and win some stuff, I'm cool with that. I'm just very sad he's leaving Barcelona. But like, my point is like those teams haven't won Champions Leagues.
I mean,
I'm just saying, City spent hundreds of millions of pounds and they ain't won a Champions League.
you never know. Things could the tide could change. You never know. You never know. But that's okay. That's fine. That's a good place to leave this today. We'll continue this at another time. Subscribe to the podcast everywhere you can listen to them. Rate us and leave us a 5-star review. If you only leave 4, I am inclined to think you're a hater, and no one wants that. Make sure you are checking out the other podcasts on the Hill Varsity Network: the Mind Your Own podcast, Varsity Club with Derek Peterson, the Nebraska Preps postgame show, and the Hill Varsity Radio Show. Also, check out the Hill Varsity YouTube page. You can find me and Aaron back on there with the recruiting question of the week this week that actually came from Aaron. So you'll want to check that out. And then you can also email the show at straightupbreakdown@hillvarsity.com. I will catch you next week.
A Huda Media Production.